So, how can the problems with Netflix become problems for comics? I will attempt to explain. My name is Gamal Hennessy. I am an author, attorney, and business consultant who specializes in the comic book industry. And I'm going to attempt to give some perspective and background from a legal and business side on the weekly news in the comic book industry. We're going to start with Netflix. As many of you probably know, the Netflix reported in the first quarter that they lost a substantial amount of subscribers. This is the first time that they've lost subscribers in many years. And many people are actually pointing to that unfortunate incident as the beginning of larger problems. Anything from the plateauing of the subscription based industry to a full blown recession. But the way it actually impacts comics specifically is in the comics to movie pitch model, because there are a lot of comic book companies whose business isn't really to make money from comics. Their business is to use comics as a proof of concept or as a pitch to get a deal from a Netflix or an Amazon or Hulu or whatever. And if Netflix starts to lose subscribers and they start to lose revenue, then it could become harder for any individual company who's leveraged them a lot of debt and put themselves in a position where they have to get this media deal to survive. Now, if you had a business model in comics that wasn't really based on any kind of media deal like that, then you don't have to worry. If you were part of a vertically integrated conglomerate that actually owned both the movie studio and the publishing arm of the company, you also don't have to worry. It's those companies who have built their business basically on leveraging comics into something else that are going to have to potentially weather some challenges ahead as the situation continues to unfold. The other major story that came out of comic books this week was also related to film, but it's more on the freelance side because the trailer for Love and Thunder, Thor Love and Thunder, dropped earlier this week. And there was a specific panel, well, a specific panning shot from that trailer that was lifted from a panel of one of the Thor God of Thunder graphic novels. This actually rekindled the ongoing conversation about how freelancers continue to get the short end of the media stick. This is an ongoing conversation. A couple weeks ago, the story was about America Chavez and her inclusion in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. A few months ago, it was about Captain America and the Winter Soldier and how Ed Brubaker wasn't compensated for that. Stories like this have perpetuated. You can go all the way back to Siegel and Schuster in 1939, but there's been a growing amount of criticism and commentary around the idea that these freelancers shouldn't have signed these deals or needed to argue for better deals. And I think that line of thinking actually ignores the idea of supply and demand and how it impacts leverage. Because for every creator, artist, writer, whoever, who goes into a conglomerate trying to get a deal, may understand that it's not the best deal on the table. And they may want to actually negotiate for a better deal, more participation on the back end, more points, whatever. But they also know that there are 12 to 15 other people who are willing to take the deal that's on the table. And since a lot of freelancers would like to eat and pay bills, they take the deal that's on the table instead of arguing for a better deal and then getting 100% of nothing. Now, there are ways that freelancers can actually leverage what they're doing for the conglomerates to their favor in a long term career, but to actually critique them or say that they've done things wrong because of the deals that they've signed when they didn't have leverage to begin with may not be the best way to look at those situations. It's just something to think about. Another thing to think about is music, which is a weird segue, especially in a video about comics, but there is a point to it. Because BTS, the K pop supergroup, announced earlier this week that they were going to be making a comic book, they had a comic book deal with Webtoons, and they're going to have an ongoing series based on the group that's going to be appearing on Webtoons. And this is not the only music-based comic book deal that has come out recently. A few months ago, Alicia Keys announced a deal with HarperCollins that she's going to have a graphic novel. There's a hip hop artist and radio host named Charlemagne the God who announced late last week, early this week, that he's got a deal with AWA and I think another deal with Simon and Schuster to start creating graphic novels. And then a couple months ago, 50 Cent announced he was going to produce and greenlight a film based on a pre-existing comic book character that DC had lost the rights to. So I think all of these different type of music related deals all are pointing to the same phenomena. One of the things that you need to sell comics is you need a built-in audience. Musicians, by virtue of all of their other activities, can bring that pre-existing audience to comics and sell books just as well, if not better, than a new book that has no audience at all. It might also be that all of these music-related comic book deals are looking long-term to media deals on the back end, like, with Hulu or Netflix or something else. And it remains to be seen whether the potential plateau of Netflix is going to affect those deals. But I still think those books themselves will be profitable just because that pre-existing audience is going to be brought to those publications. And the final bit of news is more on the distribution side, because Rich Johnson was actually named the VP of Business Development for Diamond earlier this week. Now, that's not really a surprising move because Diamond has faced so many different challenges over the past 2 years, going from pretty much the sole distributor to the direct market to now facing a lot of competition from other distributors and a lot of their publishers moving on to that competition. So it's going to be interesting to see how Mr. Johnson rights the ship, changes the business model, and attempts to lure back some business and deal with the challenges ahead. So that's going to be it for my comic industry commentary. But what are your thoughts? Do you actually see the Netflix issue affecting comics more broadly? Do you feel that the musician deals aren't going to work because those audiences might not cross over? Just put your thoughts in the comments and we'll have a discussion. Until next time, enjoy yourselves and have fun with your comics.